Hello my friends and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 character building guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering a build I've been having tremendous fun with lately, a true master of everything using one of the least used subclasses in the game, the Valour Bard. This build provides incredible spellcasting and party support, total mastery of out-of-combat skills, and backs it up with excellent damage dealing and tanking capabilities, so you can really cover any role for your party. It's also very simple to build and very forgiving to play, but doesn't trivialize the entire game, though it does come with options to trivialize encounters you might find otherwise difficult, which makes it both extremely powerful and extremely flexible, and also incredibly fun to play. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Ken Porter for the $20 donation, Tarantula for the $5, Bear Gains MSP for the $5, and Ryantology and Endai Laser 3000 for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really appreciate your support. It really means so much to me. Alright, let's get to the build. This build makes an incredible party leader and main character, whether you're doing an origin run or building it as your TAV. You lead from the front, you're excellent in conversations, you support your party members, and can really cover any role, making you the true champion of Baldur's Gate. Here I'm using Wyll as the example character because from a flavor standpoint, I think this build fits him incredibly. He is a charismatic, dashing swordsman, which is exactly what we're going to be doing with this build, and I think that Valour Bard fits his personality excellently alongside the Warlock levels that we have. If you're building this as a custom character, what race you pick mostly doesn't matter. You're going to get all of your proficiencies from your class levels anyways, but Halfling in particular is excellent for this build, as it is for every build, but especially this one. We're going to be rolling so many dice because we're making attacks, we're trying to maintain concentration on spells, we're rolling a lot of skill checks, so Halfling's ability to reroll ones will come up even more frequently for this character than it will for everyone else. Other great options include Wood Elf or Half Wood Elf for the extra movement speed, or Githyanki because their flexible expertise or flexible ability to gain proficiency in skills from Astral Knowledge is really powerful for a character that wants to be a party face, as well as a jack of all trades covering every role. And the once per day Misty Step is also very useful for them as well. But you should really just pick what you think you will have the most fun with. Those are just some mechanically optimal options. At first level, you can probably guess where we're going to start. The main challenge for Valour Bard is that it is a frontline character, it wants to be up in the mix, trading blows with enemies, while also supporting your allies with your support abilities and casting your powerful control spells. But it doesn't have a lot of tools in its kit for tanking or directly dealing damage. Fortunately, thanks to patch 8, we can solve those issues with a single class level, the good old Hexblade Warlock. With one level of Hexblade Warlock, we almost completely solve the issues that Valour Bard has, giving you tremendously higher tanking capabilities as well as much more powerful damage output in melee, so we're going to take one level of Hexblade Warlock to get that online as quickly as possible. This gets us a bunch of things. Firstly, of course, it's going to get us Bind Hexed Weapon, which is going to allow us to use our Charisma to make our weapon attacks, so we don't need to be multi-attribute dependent. We can tie both our spellcasting and our weapon attacks to our Charisma. We also get Hexblade's Curse, which will increase our damage output pretty significantly, and we get medium armor and martial weapon proficiency right away, instead of having to wait for our Valour Bard levels, which don't get it until level 3 of Valour Bard. So it gives you a lot of extra tools, especially in the early game, and then also throughout the game. We also get to take 2 cantrips here, which are incredibly powerful for this character because it gives us access to Eldritch Blast, and more, which is a great ranged option, and even more importantly, Booming Blade. Having Booming Blade on a Valour Bard gives us an incredible boost to our damage output. This is a tremendous amount of free melee damage, which makes us a credible melee threat. The main problem for Valour Bards is that even though you get extra attack, you don't have any inherent boosts to your melee damage, so you're just relying on your weapon damage, and often that can feel a little bit underwhelming. With Booming Blade, we add extra damage to each attack that we're using this ability, and it also enables a lot of item and weapon synergies to be even more powerful. Eldritch Blast gives us a good ranged option. You don't necessarily need to take this, but I do like to have it. It's just really nice to have a powerful ranged tool that's based on your charisma on this character. Another good possibility is taking Blade Ward, since this character can use that to be even tankier. So either of those are great, but you can never go wrong as a Warlock taking Eldritch Blast. For our spell selection, we also get some significant boosts to our character's defensive capabilities. This gives us access to Shield, which will make us significantly tankier, up in melee especially, but in general, enemies targeting us, we will now have a reaction to prevent their attacks, and since we can give our allies, with our Valour Bard abilities, a reaction to effectively have shield or cutting words for themselves, having the shield for our Valour Bard means that no matter who's getting attacked in our party, we can reduce the enemy's chance to hit, preventing dozens of attacks throughout longer combats. We also get to make ourselves significantly harder to take down because we get Armor of Agathis. Armor of Agathis is really powerful for a bard because bards' 5th level spells are not that exciting. So a 5th level Armor of Agathis will allow us to avoid having to make concentration checks much more frequently, prevent enemies from attacking us because they don't want to take the retaliation damage, and if they do attack us, then we get the retaliation damage and take less damage in return. So Armor of Agathis is an incredible tool for this character alongside the other tanking capabilities and damage dealing capabilities that Hexblade adds. For our ability score selection, we're going to go with 16 Charisma, 12 Wisdom, 14 Constitution, and 16 Dexterity. This, of course, gets us good initiative and high charisma so that we can cast our spells and use our weapon attacks as much as possible. It's also worth mentioning for this character that this is one of the characters that benefits the most from using Ethel's hair. So if you're intending to do that in this playthrough, this character gets a tremendous benefit from being able to start with 17 charisma and use the additional point from Ethel's hair in order to even out at 18. The reason for this is that because we took this one level of Warlock, we can't naturally hit 20 charisma and also get Alert, which is incredibly helpful in honor mode. So being able to use Ethel's hair will let us save initiative gear for another character, rather than having to use it on this one in order to achieve adequate initiative. For this guide, I'm going to assume that you're doing this with the 17 charisma, but you can certainly do 16 starting charisma and just use 2 ability score upgrades as well. It will mean needing more initiative gear, which I'll talk about a little bit in the gear section. For your skill selection for this character, of course, you want all of the dialogue skills, because you're going to be doing dialogue for your party. If you are building this as a custom character, then you can take as a background anything that gives you persuasion and insight, like guild art, or anything that gives you persuasion or other dialogue skills, like guild artisan for persuasion and insight. Or you can have this character also be your party's lock picker if you want to take charlatan or urchin in order to give yourself sleight of hand. Charlatan gives you deception as well, so those are some great backgrounds that can give you some extra skills in order to fill all of your party's out-of-combat skill needs. Of course, as we get bard levels, we'll be able to expand our skill selection as well. Here, we're going to take Wyll's starting persuasion and then deception and intimidation so that we have all of the dialogue skills that we might want available. Other than that, no decisions to make at level 1, so let's move on to level 2. At character level 2, we've already gotten everything that we need from our 1 level of Hexblade Warlock, which is just one of the best 1 level dips in the game, so we're immediately multiclassing and taking a Bard level. This, of course, gets us a number of bonuses immediately, but firstly, we get some extra cantrips. Here, I'm going to suggest taking Friends, because it's very powerful to have available on your party face. Even in honor mode, you can simply leave the area before it expires and you won't get arrested, and a lot of the persuasion checks that you're making throughout the game are against enemies you were going to fight if the check failed anyway, so very powerful for a party face. In addition to that, we're going to pick up Minor Illusion. Every party should have access to this. If you have another character that has Minor Illusion available in your party, you can take Blade Ward instead. That will allow you to be even tankier in situations where it's called for, and Blade Ward is very good at protecting your Armor of Agathis hit points, so this can be a very useful alternative. Minor Illusion is more important, so if another party member doesn't have it, go for Minor Illusion, but otherwise, Blade Ward is very valuable. This, of course, can be used to pull enemies away from their allies and kill them one by one, or group them up, since we have lots of powerful AoE control spells in order to win encounters outright. For our spell selection at this level, we're going to take Healing Word, allowing us to support our allies, and Dissonant Whispers as our main combat spell. Dissonant Whispers will just completely shut down melee enemies with no concentration for 2 turns, which is incredibly powerful, especially in the early game when a lot of the most dangerous enemies are just big melee bruisers. If they fail to save against Dissonant Whispers, you just win those fights immediately. In addition to that, we have a little more flexibility. A lot of our spell slots are going to be used, even early, we'll probably be spending 1 spell slot on Armor of Agathis. So a lot of our spell slots are going to be used on that and Dissonant Whispers or Shield in an emergency. So the other spells that we're going to take are a little more situational. We can pick up Tasha's Hideous Laughter now. We'll want this eventually because it's a very powerful control spell in the late game, because a lot of enemies who are immune to other control spells are not immune to Tasha's Hideous Laughter. So I'm going to suggest grabbing that. And then I will also say that you can just take Longstrider if you don't have another party member who can cast it. It's a little more costly for a bard to learn this than for a prepared caster, but can still be good. You can take Disguise Self in order to give you more choices in dialogue. This is going to depend somewhat heavily on what your team has available, which spell you want. Here, I'm going to suggest Disguise Self. This is a party face, so being able to disguise yourself is extremely useful. We also get an additional skill selection here, so here you can pick up Sleight of Hand if you didn't get it from your background in order to cover all of the normal out-of-combat skills that you need. You can also take Perception, or you can take one of the knowledge skills like Arcana or History if that fits the role-playing that you're doing for this character. From a mechanical perspective, the best one is probably Perception. Every party needs this, and the more characters you have proficient in it, the more rolls you get to find traps and hidden objects. Acrobatics also can prevent you from being pushed, which this character can otherwise struggle with because we have very low strength. Or if you're being the lockpicker, you'll take Sleight of Hand. Here I'm just going to take Sleight of Hand, but there's a lot of different options. Finally, of course, as a bard, you need to make sure that you select the right instrument or you ruin your run entirely. And then let's move on to level 3. At character level 3, we're taking our second level of Bard, which gets us Song of Rest, which is very good for every character, but especially good for this character, because we have a Warlock level. Although level 1 Warlocks only get 1 Warlock spell slot, so we only get 1 level 1 spell per short rest, an extra use of that is pretty helpful, because our spells are really good, even our level 1 spells. So Song of Rest is really nice for this character, and also, of course, gives you extra abilities to support your party. For your spell selection here, it, again, will be quite dependent on what your party needs. You can use something like Heroism. If you have another melee ally, you can support them by giving them regenerating hit points, and Fear Immunity can be pretty useful in the early game. Sleep can also be okay even at level 3, though you'll want to swap that out pretty quickly. But from a combat power perspective, probably the best is to take Thunderwave. Although, unlike a normal bard, you don't mind if enemies are in melee with you. This can still help push them off of cliffs or into hazardous locations, and sometimes you do need to buy space even for a tankier character like this one, so pushing enemies away with Thunderwave and then running away is still a pretty useful tool to have in your arsenal. At character level 4, we're taking our third level of Bard and getting to choose our Bard subclass, which we already know is the College of Valour. Valour Bard is often overshadowed in Baldur's Gate character builds because it fills much the same role as Swords Bard, but Swords Bard is game-breakingly powerful, just doing an enormous amount of damage. However, Hexblade allows us to solve that issue for Valour Bard, making us do great damage and giving us great tanking capabilities to go alongside the actually very cool and powerful abilities that Valour Bard gives us. So we can tank and deal damage while also being a full spellcaster and providing great party support through Combat Inspiration, which is in fact a very strong ability. This works similarly to normal Bardic Inspiration, but in addition to letting you boost your attack rolls, skill checks, or saves, it also lets you boost your weapon damage or armor class. So it works similarly to Cutting Words in that you can prevent enemy attacks from landing, or you can use the attack roll boost to make your attacks land more easily, but you can also increase the damage of your attacks if you think you need that extra damage to kill an enemy. Because these bonuses last until long rest, or until you use them, you can pass them out very aggressively to your party members and make sure that you always have this bonus when you need it. And it's extremely helpful to be able to turn important rolls into a success when they were otherwise going to fail, or kill an enemy in one turn when it was otherwise going to take two. Since we don't need to use our inspiration dice in order to boost our damage, like a sword bard does, we just get our damage from Hexblade instead, we can just use all our inspiration dice to boost our allies. So your whole party gets passively and more or less permanently vastly stronger just for having this character in it, while the character itself is also doing great damage and providing excellent control with your spells. And speaking of spells, of course, we also get to choose a level 2 spell, which is going to be Cloud of Daggers, just the best combat spell, more or less, in the game, doing constant damage with no saving throw, and you can concentrate on this while also attacking with your weapon as a Hexblade. And we're also going to replace one of our lower level spells. We took a bunch of somewhat situational spells at lower levels, so we're going to replace one of these and make sure that we grab Hold Person. Hold Person is not only a powerful control spell in and of itself, it also works very well for this character, because if the enemy is paralyzed, then in subsequent turns we'll get automatic critical hits with our melee attacks, which we're going to be doing very frequently as a Hexblade. It also, of course, synergizes with the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel if we're going that direction with our gear, which is, of course, a very, very powerful option for this character. On top of these powerful spell options, we also get to add expertise to 2 skills. So one of those is always going to be Persuasion. It's the most important of the dialogue skills, so you always are going to want expertise and persuasion. The second one is a little more flexible. If this character is your lockpicker, then of course you're going to put it into sleight of hand. And with 16 dexterity and expertise in sleight of hand, that's going to be good enough to do every lock and trap in the game, basically. So this character makes an excellent lockpicker as well. Or, of course, you could have expertise in deception or intimidation if you want to use those more frequently, or another skill that you're rolling pretty frequently if you have a different lockpicking character in your party. At character level 5, we get to take our 4th Bard level, of course, which gets us another cantrip. In this case, we're going to take Blade Ward, because it's great for protecting our Armor of Agathis hit points. If you have a character that is using the buff on heal gear, then you can also take a utility cantrip like Light, or you can take Vicious Mockery for fun. Of course, Eldritch Blast is going to usually be your better damage cantrip, but there are reasons to take Vicious Mockery. Both it's hilarious, and it does work with the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel in the late game. For your spell selection here, at this point we have all of the combat spells that we primarily need, so you can take utility spells that your party might want. Things like Invisibility or Enhanceability can be very helpful. Heat Metal is a good combat spell, so you can pick that up as well, but here I'm just going to recommend picking up Enhanceability. You'll usually try not to use this spell, but when you want it, it's nice to have it on a party member, so it can be useful to spend a Bard spell slot on having it available. For our feat, we really have 2 choices for which feat that we're going to pick. If you took Ethel's Hair and are boosting your charisma up to 18, then you should start with Alert. Or if you're intending to use the Mirror to boost your charisma up to maximum, you should pick Alert. Getting Alert at early levels just makes your Honor Mode party significantly more consistent and more powerful, lets you shut down enemies with Hold Person and other powerful control spells before they ever act, and lets you kill stuff before it gets to take a turn. The alternative is to take an ability score improvement if you know you're not using any of the story events that will boost your charisma, in which case you'll just take +2 charisma, but in this case we're going to take Alert and use Ethel's Hair to hit 18 charisma somewhere around this time as well. At character level 6, we get 3rd level spells from Bard, and we also get Font of Inspiration, which gives us a tremendous boost to our combat inspiration dice, making them much more plentiful. They also go up to +1d8, and adding an extra d8 of damage is not that relevant at level 6, but will still come up sometimes. An enemy who's about to be left at sub 5 HP, you can often kill in one hit with the combat inspiration damage die, but adding an extra d8 to your armor class is extremely likely to make enemies miss attacks, so this improved bardic inspiration means that your allies will be significantly more resilient to enemy attacks. We also have Shield to give ourselves additional armor class, and no matter who the enemy targets in our party, they will always be contending with a higher armor class than they thought they were, and that can make them waste turns pretty frequently, which is both very funny and very powerful. For For our spell selection at this level, of course, we get access to 3rd level spells, and so we're going to pick up, which is a massive power spike for every character, so we're going to pick up Hypnotic Pattern as the best overall control spell at this level. It's also an illusion spell, so again, Band of the Mystic Scoundrel is a possibility, but this way we can concentrate on Hypnotic Pattern, and then you can use your melee attacks to wake enemies up from the Hypnotic Pattern, whereupon they will wake up dead. We're also going to replace one of our lower level spells with a more powerful 3rd level spell for spamming in combat. I still like having Dissonant Whispers at this point though, so you may find that you no longer need Healing Word, or you may find that you no longer need something like Disguise Self, so that's what we're going to replace here, and we're going to pick up Glyph of Warding. This gives us a non-concentration damage spell, and is going to be our main damage spell, giving us good AoE damage, as well as non-concentration control from the sleep effect. You cast this on an enemy and it goes off immediately, and then you can finish them off again with melee attacks. At level 6 in Valour Bard, we get a very important ability, Extra Attack. This is a little bit slow to get Extra Attack, but remember that this is on a full spellcaster, so we're able to contribute in combat because we have extremely powerful combat spells. And now also we get incredible damage output with our charisma-based attacks, bringing our damage on par with other characters. Because we have Booming Blade as well, our 1 attack per turn up until this point has been a very good attack, and now we get multiple attacks per turn, which of course means even more damage. We also get to take another 3rd level spell. At this point, you can pick up something like Plant Growth. That is a little heavy on the level 3 spell slots, but it works very well, especially if you have another Warlock in your party to combine this with Hunger of Hadar. You can completely shut down encounters, or you can go back for a utility spell that you didn't take at earlier levels, something like Invisibility that your party might need, or Fear as an alternative to Hypnotic Pattern for when you're facing an encounter where you can land Fear on multiple enemies. It's usually the more powerful of the 2 disables, even if it's a little more situational. All of those are great options. Here I'm going to recommend taking Plant Growth, but again, this is going to be somewhat dependent on what spells your party has access to. A good rule of thumb is if another party member can cast it, then take something else so you have the maximum number of options available. At character level 8, we get our 7th level of Bard, which gives us 4th level spells. Now, Bard 4th level spells are fairly situational. There's some that are pretty strong, like Confusion, and some that are very strong in the right strategy, like Greater Invisibility, but mostly you're going to be using your level 3 spells, primarily in combat, and a lot of times you're going to be upcasting level 3 spells instead of using a 4th level spell. For that reason, I like to take more situational spells with my 4th level spell slots, so we're going to start with Confusion because it's very good in some encounters. It doesn't hit allies, so if you're mixed up with your enemies, you can use this safely, and it also will allow you to have enemies attack each other while you just leave, which is very useful in some circumstances. We're not going to replace one of our lower level spells, though, because 4th level spells are a lower priority than the other spells that we have at this point. Then at level 9, we get another 4th level spell, and we're going to take Freedom of Movement. This is very powerful as a panic button. You don't usually want to spend a spell slot on casting this just as a day-long buff, because the impact is not significant enough to be worth the spell slot on its own. But it's really nice to have access to support your party because of the first line of the spell, Snap an ally out of any stun. I went over the uses for this in my video, the 5 most underrated spells in Baldur's Gate 3, but basically this is a great panic button for when an ally gets stunned, which is especially prevalent in the late game, and can turn an otherwise lost fight into something that's just not a problem. Great to have access to for this character, especially because empowering your party is the whole point of this character, and since you're pretty tanky and have good saves and everything, you're unlikely to be the one getting stunned yourself. For our feat selection here, we're going to take an ability improvement and boost our charisma by 2 points, combined with the 1 point that we got from Ethel's hair. That should put us at 20 charisma, which is exactly perfect for the character. At level 10, we get Bard level 9 and get 5th level Bard spells, and of course there's one in particular that's much stronger than the other available spells at this level, Hold Monster. Hold Monster is, you Obviously much more expensive to use than Hold Person, so against any enemy that is vulnerable to Hold Person, you'll always prefer that. But this is a very powerful tool for any character that is both casting spells and making attacks, because you can paralyze an enemy and then get automatic critical hits against them with your weapon attacks, which of course are very strong and get additional damage dice from Booming Blade, which is also multiplied by the paralysis critical, and so on. This also, of course, is an enchantment spell, so if you're using the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, then you can cast it as a bonus action after attacking, which this character can use that incredibly powerful strategy just as well as a Sword Bard can, because we are also making weapon attacks. No need to replace a spell, though. This is the only 5th level spell that we particularly need. At Bard level 10, we get a number of very powerful abilities. Firstly, we get an additional cantrip, which allows us to take True Strike to annoy people in the YouTube comments. Then we also get an extra spell. Since there aren't any other 5th level spells that we are super interested in, we can go back and grab a utility spell from earlier levels. Anything that you feel your party is missing is a good pickup here, and at this point in the game, of course, you should have a good idea of what you might want. Things like invisibility are very helpful. Fear is great to give you yet another control option. Greater invisibility can be very useful. Overall, I think that from a mechanical standpoint, the most powerful is probably Fear, just to give you all of the relevant control options on a single character. But any of those other options are great, and of course, you will have a better sense at this point of what your party needs and can pick a spell appropriately. More importantly, though, we also get 2 magical secrets. Now, one magical secret is almost always going to be Counterspell, because this is just an amazing defensive option and lets this character defend your allies even better. Having Counterspell in addition to all of the other defensive tools that you get from playing a Valour Bard just makes this character a tremendous all-rounder defensive and supporting character, in addition to, again, all the damage and tanking capabilities that we have as well. For our second choice here, we have a ton of awesome options. In fact, it's very difficult to go wrong with your magical secrets pick, so my honest advice is to pick what you think looks most fun and cool to you, rather than try to squeeze every ounce of power out of this choice, because no matter what you pick, you're going to end up with something incredibly powerful, but I will talk about the most mechanically powerful options. Firstly, we have the strongest one is Command. If you're using the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, the ability to cast Command as a bonus action after making melee attacks is basically unparalleled in Baldur's Gate 3 in terms of strength. This is one of the best control spells in the game. It's non-concentration, it works on just about everything, and being able to bonus action cast it on an entire encounter while also doing damage is of course incredibly strong. So if you want the strongest version of this character, then that's the one. Other great options include Spirit Guardians. This character is going to be up in the mix. We have Armor of Agathis, we're pretty tanky, so we can run up around enemies, concentrating on Spirit Guardians, doing constant damage. If they attack us, they'll take damage as well, and this will give us the ability to use the Radiating Orb gear in the late game, because Spirit Guardians on a tanky character that also does great melee damage is of course incredible. It turns us basically into a Crown Paladin in addition to all of the other things that we get to do. Hunger of Hadar makes a great controlling option for this character. We have plant growth already, so when hasted, you can do the full combo on your own of casting Hunger of Hadar and plant growth on top of each other, which can just win encounters, and if you don't have another party member with access to this, this is just one of the most encounter-winning spells in the game, so having it is really nice for any party. Ice Storm is good. It gives us another non-concentration combat spell in addition to Glyph of Warding that also lets us control enemies, so this is a solid option as well. And Conjure Elemental gives us a great use for our 6th level spell slot, because the Myrmidon summon is pretty much the best thing you can do with a 6th level spell, so Conjure Elemental just makes your entire party significantly stronger. You can also put inspiration dice on it, and it can use them, which is pretty nice as well. Finally, one other fun option is Banishing Smite. This spell is a little less special than it used to be because Hexblades get it, so it's no longer only bards with magical secrets that can use it, but it's still a really fun spell and does a lot of damage and can banish enemies, so if you're looking for a fun option that just gives you a great burst damage attack, Banishing Smite is the way to go. Overall, the most powerful option is command, so that's what I'm going to pick for this example. But again, have fun with this. Magical Secrets should let you do something cool, basically no matter what you pick. So you should try to make it as cool as possible. We also, of course, get additional skill expertise, so we can have expertise in more dialogue skills and just be even better at the skills that we're using. And that makes us able to succeed on pretty much any dialogue check, no matter what choice we're using in the late game, since we have expertise in basically every relevant skill. Finally, at character level 12, we're going to take our 11th level of Bard in order to get 6th level spells, and that gets us access to Otto's Irresistible Dance, which of course is an incredible late-game crowd control. Since there's no saving throw on the initial cast of this spell, it will always cost enemies at least one turn, and can just win boss fights outright. It's also worth mentioning that you could take not your 11th Bard level at this point. Multi-classing at this point is a totally reasonable option for the 12th level of this character. In particular, taking one level of Wizard still gets you 6th level spell slots and can get you access to Wizard spells for a bunch of extra utility. You could take a 2nd level of Warlock if you want to lean more into Eldritch Blast, because that can get you Agonizing Blast, and then you can be a more ranged combatant. Or 1 level of Cleric can get you a bunch of other utility spells, especially if you took Haste as a magical secret. You can use Sanctuary from a level of Cleric, and 1 level in Life Cleric gets you heavy armor and extra healing bonuses as well, so that can be a good option. But just taking an extra level of Bard is going to be a very powerful choice, so that's what we're using here. I just wanted to mention that this build multi-classes well for the last level, especially Wizard can give you a lot of extra options in terms of the spells that you have available. Alright, that is the Valour Bard, making an incredible main character, and I hope that you enjoy this for your honor mode parties, and that it helps you get those honor mode wins. But of course we can make the character stronger with proper itemization, so let's talk about those. So, good news, my cat has arrived to help us talk about items, and has crammed himself into a tiny drawer in my office, so you might hear his input or possibly a bunch of crashing sounds when he realizes he doesn't know how to get back out. The items for this character are great because, as with basically everything else for this character, you have tons of options and tremendous versatility. You'll notice that I have here an enormous number of suggested weapons, and that's because one-handed weapons are often something that you don't get to use that often in Baldur's Gate 3 build guides, especially one-handed weapons that are primarily designed for utility, but this character uses them incredibly well, so I'm going to talk about some of the great options that we have in order to customize your party to what you want it to do. Firstly, of course, this character is an amazing Falar Louv carrier. A lot of honor mode parties are going to want one of these. It's the best weapon in the game because of the Shriek ability, just increasing your damage output so immensely. And this character will be great at running up into the mix and carrying it. It also, it gives you +1 performance, so it's even on theme for the character. You also have the option to use other very, very powerful one-handed weapons. Rhapsody, of course, gives us extra attack rolls and damage, and also extra spell save DC. Since we're making attacks and casting spells, the extra save DC is incredibly powerful. Another incredible option is Shar's Spear of Evening. This is probably the best one-handed weapon in the game in terms of actually attacking enemies. So this character, which wants a powerful one-handed weapon, can make incredible use of this extremely strong weapon that can actually be somewhat difficult to fit in your party otherwise. Saloon Spear of Night is also a great option if you took that story route, because it's still a very powerful option. The Moon Mote ability is awesome and extremely strong for this character, giving additional damage to you and all of your allies and helping you support your party as well. Some other cool utility options are available to this character. Of course, we're a spellcaster. We can always use Mark of Heshkir. It's still a +2 weapon, so you can just attack with it, and it's totally fine, in addition to giving you incredible spellcasting. This character can also use the Infernal Rapier, and although it's a little redundant with bind hexed weapon, because it's going to use your charisma naturally. You don't need the hexed weapon. The Cambion summon is really good anyways, and one trick you can do with the Infernal Rapier is to bind a different weapon as your hexed weapon, use this until the Cambion dies, and then swap to that weapon instead, because you basically have a consumable from the summon that this weapon gives you, so you can kind of double up there. Also, the Blood of Lathander is available very early on and is a very powerful one-handed weapon with a great spell attached to it. Excellent for Act 2 in particular, when you have a character that really wants a strong one-handed weapon. This weapon is often sort of passively carried by clerics and doesn't get to actually attack enemies frequently, but it's still a +3 weapon, so it's really good at attacking. Another weapon that I really like for this character in the late game is the Sacred Star. This does extra radiant damage and inflicts Radiating Orb naturally. And it has the Heartstopper action, which will, for 2 turns, cause enemies to just simply lose an action outright. A lot of bosses are not immune to this effect, and this can just win encounters, so once per short rest, you just get an incredibly powerful stun. And because it does radiant damage and inflicts Radiating Orb naturally, if you went the route of using Spirit Guardians as your magical secret spell and are making this character a Radiating Orb user, the Sacred Star lets you stack those up even faster, while also being a pretty potent weapon that otherwise doesn't see a lot of use in Baldur's Gate character optimization. This character can also forego a shield and use the Duelist's Prerogative. You can get extra attacks with a bonus action using that, so it's very powerful there. And the extra reaction is really good because we have Counterspell, so this character can use its reactions extremely well. And of course, opportunity attacks are also really good. This is more for flavor than because it's specifically optimal for this character, because I think shields are really nice for us. But the Duelist's Prerogative is also a really good option. From a strict power level standpoint, your best option in the late game is the Spear of Evening, or just Markahesh gear, but any of these make really, really fun options, so I recommend experimenting with which weapon you want this character to carry. We also get to defend ourselves better with our other items and increase our damage, so that's what we're mostly looking for, is increases to our save DC and increases to our defenses, in addition to the very versatile weapon selection that we have. Firstly, let's look at our gloves. The Helldust gloves are, of course, tailor-made for this character. You get bonuses to your attack rolls and your save DC, and bonuses to your weapon damage, so you use every aspect of this very powerful set of gloves. They're probably the best overall gloves in the game, and this character uses them better than just about anyone else, so the Helldust gloves are awesome for us. Another option is we could use the Gloves of Dexterity. Extra Dexterity is really good for this character, and the bonus to attack rolls works on your spell attacks as well, so it works on your Eldritch Blast. And this can give you higher initiative, especially if you skipped Alert, and can let you use one of the armors with uncapped Dexterity for even higher armor class. So those are some great glove options. For our helmet, we can either go with something like the Fistbreaker Helm that gives us extra save DC, and bonuses to initiative are always nice, or of course if we want the most powerful option overall, the Helmet of Arcane Acuity is broken for this character just like it is for pretty much any character that's both casting spells and making weapon attacks. With 2 weapon attacks, you're going to stack up 4 stacks of Arcane Acuity, and then with the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, you can bonus action cast one of your extremely strong control spells to shut enemies down immediately. Speaking of the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, that of course is the best ring for this character overall. If you're tired of this strategy, then I don't blame you, but it would be criminal not to mention it, because it is incredibly strong for this character, as with any character that's both making weapon attacks and casting illusion and enchantment spells, because being able to cast those as a bonus action with higher save DC because of Arcane Acuity is of course incredibly strong. Other great options include rings that just increase your damage, like the Strange Conduit ring will almost always be concentrating on a spell, so that's a very powerful tool. And the Ring of Arcane Synergy works extremely well. We have Booming Blade, so we're always dealing damage with a cantrip, so Arcane Synergy will just basically double our charisma bonus to damage and can increase our damage output immensely. More item slots that are really useful for this character are, of course, the shield. This character wants to be a one-handed weapon and shield user most of the time, although you can build it as a two-handed character as well, but you don't get huge benefits from doing that because we don't get Great Weapon Master, so the extra bonuses from shields are really nice defensively, and it makes this character a really good tank. The Adamantine Shield can prevent critical hits, which is extremely helpful for this character, because spikes of damage are the only thing that we're really worried about in terms of taking us down. We have great armor class, we have Armor of Agathis for extra hit points, so the Adamantine Shield can prevent one of the ways in which you can get into trouble, or Ketheric's Shield can just increase your spell save DCs, which of course, this is a spellcaster, increasing your spell save DCs is the #1 thing that you want from items. For amulets, the Amulet of Greater Health will give us tons of HP and make it so we just never drop concentration on spells, so that's a great option. The Amulet of the Devout will give us bonuses to spell save DCs, so that's a really good one as well. Another one that I like is the Surgeon's Subjugation Amulet, which can let you paralyze a humanoid enemy for free, meaning that this character can shut down humanoid enemies and then critically hit them automatically with our very strong weapon attacks extremely frequently also. For our armor, we just want the best defensive armor that we can get. This character wants to be as strong as possible defensively so that enemies can't shut it down, because you do want to be up in the mix. So especially if you're using the Gloves of Dexterity, the Armor of Agility is great, just really high armor class and bonuses to your saving throws. Another great option is the Flame Enameled Armor. This, combined with Alert and 16 Dexterity, gets us to the +10 initiative that is kind of the benchmark for Honor Mode, and then also gives us resistance to a bunch of relevant damage types by giving us resistance to fire damage, bonuses to saving throws, and the ability to cast Fire Shield for resistance to cold damage for fights where we want that. Also kind of fun to have Wyll in the Flame Enameled Armor. For our cloak, I recommend the Cloak of Displacement. The reason for this is that this is a character who, despite being pretty tanky, usually doesn't want enemies to attack it, so the Cloak of Displacement not only makes it so that you won't die, or get attacked you will take less damage when enemies do attack you, because they'll have disadvantage on the attacks, and you can then block them with shield and so on. It also means enemies will target you less frequently. When they target your allies, that's when Combat Inspiration can prevent those attacks from going off, and it means that you don't have to worry about maintaining concentration on spells at all if enemies aren't targeting you. So the Cloak of Displacement gives us some really nice defensive capabilities. For our boots, either the Disintegrating Nightwalkers are very important because getting Misty Step on this character is one thing that we don't have, so the Disintegrating Nightwalkers or the Amulet of Misty Step, oh, I put the wrong item here. They have the same graphic, but the Amulet of Misty Step that gives you Misty Step is a great option as well. Pretty much every character should try to have Misty Step, so getting one of those items will make your character able to move around the battlefield more easily, or alternatively, the Boots of Striding can prevent you from being knocked prone, which of course is one of the other things that you're worried about. Also worth mentioning for this character in terms of itemization is that you're one of the best users of scrolls and items that have spells on them in the game. You can boost your save DCs either with your itemization or with Arcane Acuity. You can often bonus action cast them if you're using the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, and you're just a character that's making weapon attacks and casting spells, so you're great at using scrolls. You're also incredible at using Illithid powers. Every Illithid power is relevant for you because you're both making weapon attacks and casting spells, and so you have high save DCs on the Illithid powers. And things like Favorable Beginnings also work in dialogue, which this character is going to be doing all of. So Favorable Beginnings, Luck of the Far Realms, Pull the Weak, these are all extremely powerful options for your Illithid powers, making this one of the best Illithid power users in the game as well. So if you are using Illithid powers in your party, I recommend that this be the character that uses them because you're just so good at it. Alright, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at the Valour Bard, a true party leader and a character that I've really been loving, and I hope you enjoy it as well. As always, of course, if you have enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a comment and hit like. Helps me out a ton with the algorithm, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 build guides and other strategy game analysis. Cheers, my friends. I'll catch you next time.